Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the October 2015 Research Showcase from the Wikimedia Foundation. Today, we are going to have only one presentation, but this is perhaps going to be a longer one than usual. So there's going to be more time for the presentation itself and then for Q&A. The presentation is focused on the research that Aaron Halfaker from Research and Data, our research scientist, did, along with Jonathan Morgan, our senior design researcher, on Teahouse. So without further ado, I'll let the two start.
Awesome. Thanks, Layla. So I'm Jonathan, and I'm going to start off our presentation today. Aaron and I are going to go back and forth. And we are going to, let me share screen. We're going to present some research in progress on the some analysis we've done, some new analysis we've done on the impact of the Wikipedia Teahouse on new editor retention. So the talk will be broken down into three basic sections. First, we're going to talk in general about the kinds of barriers that new editors to Wikipedia face, and take a look at some of the historical trends. Then we're going to talk about the Teahouse in particular and where it fits into the new editor onboarding funnel and the approach it takes to supporting new editors to increase retention. And then we're going to present the outcomes of our initial forays into evaluating the long-term impact of the Teahouse on new editor retention. And we're going to talk about our plans from here on out. So first, a little background. For anyone who's watching this talk who doesn't know what the Teahouse is, it is a wiki project on English Wikipedia, and this is where I should say it started on English Wikipedia, and there are now Teahouses on many different Wikipedias. First developed in 2012 by two Wikimedia fellows, me and Sarah Sturch, and two members of the Wikimedia Foundation staff, Seiko Baturs and Heather Walls. It's run by editors on English Wikipedia, and it was designed to reach out proactively to new editors, especially women, foster a peer support environment, decrease the intimidation that new editors face when learning the ropes of Wikipedia, and overall to increase the retention of valuable new editors on Wikipedia. And with that, I'm going to switch off to Aaron to talk a little bit about the history of new editor retention on Wikipedia.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Jonathan. I need to start this story with a study that I use to start a lot of the stories of the presentations that I make here. This is a study that I did with Jonathan. There's this wonderful summary of it on Meta, The Rise and Decline. If you know our URL or our page linking factor, then you should be able to find it behind this link. We'll also have these slides uploaded so you can just click on it later too. In order to give you an overview of this story, I'm going to talk you through the history of this graph that I have on the top of the screen, which is showing the number of active editors in English Wikipedia over time. So in the early days of Wikipedia, Wikipedia wasn't very big, and most of the infrastructure that made Wikipedia function was made of people operating on top of the MediaWiki platform, but it was really a crowd of people. As Wikipedia started to grow exponentially, the rate at which new editors were coming in and new articles were being created became like a fire hose. It was suddenly overwhelming. And so Wikipedians engaged into a lot of strategies to try and deal with this fire hose, such as building automated counter-vandalism tools and making their policies more restrictive. And this, the age of the decline of Wikipedia is sort of characterized by the introduction of these things. So the state of the matter is right now that these tools that people use to filter incoming content act as a filter between the internet and Wikipedia. So in 2009, there was a study published by Baumansa et al. From Palo Alto Research Center that noticed that Wikipedia was declining. And they didn't just note that Wikipedia's population was declining, but they were also able to figure out that it wasn't that experienced editors were leaving, it was that newcomers who would show up and do work would not stick around for very long. And so this started a series of questions that people started digging into the data around Wikipedia to answer. It was in 2012, the very same, or at least an earlier group of fellows, to the one that Jonathan was referring to, dug into this question and learned that the problem with newcomers was not that they were all bad or that they weren't finding work to do. It was that we forgot about socializing them. In dealing with this fire hose of incoming new editors, we had built all of our tools and infrastructure to filter out the bad. And we had not focused on supporting the good at the same time. So what we ended up doing was essentially throwing the baby out with the bathwater. All right, back to Jonathan.
All right, thank you, Aaron.
Ready.
All right. So speaking of babies and bathwater, so the experience of new editors on Wikipedia is difficult and fraught with peril. Now I'm going to provide an overview of some of those challenges that newcomers face, and the challenges faced by particular subsets of newcomers as well. So over the time period that Aaron was reviewing, the types of contacts that newcomers had with Wikipedia community members in their first few edit sessions, in their first few days, changed dramatically. Between 2005 and 2011, an analysis done by members of the Wikimedia Foundation found that more and more newcomers were getting warning messages on their talk pages as their first point of contact, their first introduction to the community. So the initial environment that these newcomers were found themselves in was a lot more hostile, and that trend increased over time. Particular subsets of newcomers may have experienced these issues at a higher rate, and may have been especially vulnerable to these kinds of experiences. So there are systemic biases in Wikipedia's content that stem from over or underrepresentation of certain cohorts of people within the editing community. For example, our best estimates show that only about 16% of active Wikipedia editors are women, and some studies have shown that female editors are more likely to leave because of negative social interactions on Wikipedia. So the changing environment, the increase in hostility in the editing environment for newcomers, is likely having a damping effect on any attempt to increase the number of females participating in the encyclopedia. There are a number of new editor engagement initiatives that have been tried out on both the Wikimedia Foundation side and within the English Wikipedia community to support newcomers and increase the rate at which good faith newcomers of all types and also within particular cohorts are retained on Wikipedia. So some of these include the mood bar, feedback dashboard, the getting started workflow, visual editor itself, and also community-driven initiatives such as the Welcoming Committee and the Adopt a User program. All of these initiatives are aimed at addressing particular bottlenecks in the new editor onboarding or activation funnel. You can conceptualize some of these bottlenecks in a couple of different ways. So on this slide, we're looking at three different areas where people are likely to face certain sets of challenges that affect their ability to or desire to go to progress to become active Wikipedia editors. There are challenges related to permission to edit, which affect some people, and these are challenges such as basic infrastructural challenges like ability to access a computer or a stable network infrastructure to access the internet, or just the ability to edit successfully, such as people without accounts not being able to create new pages. There are also steep literacy barriers that prevent a lot of people from becoming successful editors on Wikipedia. These literacy barriers range from technical literacy, so understanding Wikipedia markup or understanding the revision history of articles, the fact that anything added is, with few exceptions, actually retained, so that articles preserve the entire history of their edits. And also conceptual literacy barriers, so understanding the nature of reliable sources or the nature of notable encyclopedic content. And finally, there are steep social or motivational barriers, barriers around things that would encourage or discourage people from editing based on their experiences. So some of these initiatives target different areas in the funnel. So for instance, Visual Editor is meant to decrease the literacy barrier by making it easier to edit. Other initiatives are aimed at decreasing the social or motivational barriers. So providing more rewarding experiences for new editors. And the Teahouse is one of these. In fact, the Teahouse aims at addressing both literacy and social motivational barriers. It's aimed at reducing literacy barriers by providing people with the information they need to become successful new editors, and the social motivational barriers by giving them initial positive experiences of the editing experience itself and also the community environment of Wikipedia. So by addressing both the literacy and social motivational barriers, the Teahouse is intended to reduce or widen two bottlenecks around literacy and social and motivation. The Teahouse achieves this, or attempts to achieve this, in a particular way. First, it provides a different and potentially more scalable and more broadly applicable approach to addressing the kinds of literacy questions that newcomers may have. So as opposed to a mentorship program where a mentor may take on one or more mentees who they then teach about how to edit Wikipedia successfully, the Teahouse offers social Q&A, a pattern that you find all over the internet, from Yahoo Answers to Stack Exchange. And in this pattern, anybody can ask a question and anybody can answer it. So it allows people to ask the question that they have when they have it and get an answer faster, and in fact to get a variety of different answers. This allows a lot more people to be served than through a traditional mentorship approach. It's also opt-in, so you get the support when you need it, rather than when your mentor is available. And it's social, so it provides people with an experience of interacting with other newcomers and with experienced Wikipedia editors. And this leads to the other focus of the Teahouse, which is to focus on the community behind Wikipedia, which is something that many newcomers don't really get when they first create an account and start editing. That this encyclopedia is written by people, and that those people are still there. That there are forums, and that there's lively interaction going on outside of the article space. So what Teahouse does is first identify a set of potentially good faith newcomers out of the fire hose of people who are creating accounts every day, thousands and thousands of people, and send them an invitation to visit this forum. When they get there, they find a forum that's designed particularly for them and to serve their needs. The primary interaction space is a Q&A board where any newcomer can ask any question that they have about editing, and they can get an answer from another newcomer or from an experienced Teahouse host. The process for asking a question is a lot more straightforward than on a general Wikipedia page. There's a gadget that allows you to click a button, put in a title for your question, put in the body of your question, and click another button to submit it. So rather than having to, say, edit a page full of wiki markup in order to ask a question about how to edit wiki markup, you can ask a question in a more WYSIWYG fashion and get the information you need. The Teahouse also provides mechanisms for introducing yourself to the Wikipedia community. This is something that newcomers seem to want, but there are a few opportunities on Wikipedia to actually express who you are, why you're excited about being here. And the Teahouse also provides profiles for the hosts, the experienced Wikipedians who answer questions and who welcome newcomers on the Teahouse. So newcomers get a sense not only of who the other people who are joining Wikipedia are, but they also get a sense of who the Wikipedians are who they're interacting with. And this gives them a window into the social dynamics of the community that's a lot more friendly than the window they usually get, which takes the form of a warning message on their talk page or a terse interaction on an article page. And overall, the experience of the Teahouse is meant to be welcoming and positive and engaging. So from the initial message that you get on your talk page, which is an enthusiastic invitation with a warm tone to come visit this space whenever you want to the expectations that hosts are asked to adhere to when they interact with new editors on the Teahouse, which urge them to be welcoming, be polite and patient, keeping answers simple and straightforward, avoid just linking to help pages or policy pages rather than answering a question directly, and also letting newcomers know when their question has been answered, because newcomers may not quite understand the process of watch lists or notifications. So that's how we designed the Teahouse, and it's been chugging along pretty successfully since the start. About 100 invites go out per day. That's over 140,000 since we launched. The Q&A board is very active. There's about a dozen questions asked every day, and each question gets several answers generally. Several new profiles are created by new users every day, and within a given week, 15 to 20 different hosts are participating. During the original Teahouse pilot project, we ran some initial research to understand the impact of the Teahouse and also to try to characterize the experience that new users were having there. We ran a survey asking new users what aspects of the Teahouse they liked, disliked, as well as what they wanted and needed in general, and a very little bit about who they were and where they were coming from. We found that almost 80% of them really enjoyed their experience at the Teahouse, and that a higher than expected percentage of them identified as women. Remember that only 16% of active editors are women. So the fact that 29% of survey respondents identified as female is some indication that the Teahouse is engaging to one of the vulnerable and valuable subpopulations that we're trying to retain on English Wikipedia. We also ran some fairly short-term retention analysis of of people who visited the tea house versus those who were invited to visit but did not, and found that those who visited the tea house after invitation made significantly more edits to more articles, and that they remained active longer than those who elected not to visit the tea house but continued editing to some extent anyway. However, this previous research had some limitations. First was that there were inherent self-selection biases. There were biases both in who the hosts decided to invite to the tea house. So hosts who sent the invites, this was before we started using a bot, may have only invited people who they thought were editing in good faith based on their judgment. There was also a self-selection bias in whether people who were invited decided to visit the tea house or not. So, for example, those who are inherently more motivated or more engaged, and therefore probably more likely to stick around on Wikipedia despite negative experiences, may have also been more likely to visit the tea house when invited. And another limitation is that the retention analysis we ran was relatively short-term as well. We only really looked at whether people were making more edits up to about 2 months after they were invited. So in the current study, we wanted to build on this, and we wanted to be able to answer the question with more certainty. Does the tea house increase new editor retention? Our specific question was, do people who are invited to the tea house edit more, and do they edit for longer than people who seem to share the same characteristics as they did at the point of invitation, but were not given an invite? So in this study, we took a sample of about 15,000 new editors who joined between late October in 2014 and mid-January of 2015. Invites were delivered by bot, so there was no self-selection bias in who to invite, and we held back a control sample. So for every 100 or so people who were candidates for an invitation, about 20% of them were not invited, and this was our control sample. The invite criteria were the same whether somebody was given an invite or whether they were held back in the control sample. They had to have made at least 5 edits to Wikipedia after having joined within the last 24 to 48 hours. They had to not have been blocked in that time and not received any serious warnings. So generally that correlates to level 4 user warnings, as well as any warnings that seem to be about sock puppetry. So now I'm going to walk through our methods and our findings here. So this first slide shows the interval between when all of the people in our study registered and when they received the treatment. So within 24 or 48 hours of registration, the treatment went into effect. And this only affects about 10% of new editors. So these are people who met our invite criteria and who were selected for the study. About 80% of them were given a tea house invite at that point, and the other 20% were not. That's our control group. Then, after the invitation, whether or not they visited the tea house, we wanted to see what happened in several different windows down the line. So we're looking at the survival of these new editors within 3 different periods, whether they edited within 3 to 4 weeks after invitation, and whether they edited within 1 to 2 months after invitation, and whether they edited 2 to 6 months after invitation. And survival in this case means either having made 1 edit in a particular window. So somebody would have been counted as surviving if 3 weeks after they were invited, they made 1 edit, whether or not they made any more edits than that. And we also looked at, for survival as active editors. So whether people made 5 or more edits within each of these windows. So somebody who didn't make any edits at all up to 2 months after they were invited, but then made 5 edits between 2 and 6 months would have been counted as surviving within 2 or 6 months after invitation. So this study design was meant to evaluate the effect of the treatment of being invited to the tea house. Because of the inherent self-selection bias of who actually decides to go to the tea house, this study is designed as an intent to treat study. Basically, does actually receiving an invitation to the tea house, does that have an effect on your retention? And there are various reasons to think that simply receiving a positive message on your talk page and being made aware of this forum could have a positive effect on new editor retention. So first, we want to look at survival at the 3 to 4 week range. We did a chi-square analysis, which simply looks at the number of people or the percentage of people in each sample who fit into this, who made at least one edit within this window, and whether the differences between the two groups are greater than those that we would expect by chance. So is there any non-random variation between the people who received a tea house invite and the people who didn't, in terms of their likelihood of making at least one edit between 3 to 4 weeks after invitation, and then 1 to 2 months after invitation, and 2 to 6 months? So we found significance for people who had made at least one edit 3 to 4 weeks after invitation, and we found that in fact those in the treatment group were more likely than chance to have made more than one edits during that time period. So this shows us that for people who may tend to be moderately active, the tea house invitation seems to have a positive effect on retention in the short term, but less so in the long term. So if you think about editors' general likelihood of becoming Wikipedians, you can expect that those who are initially, and in fact previous research has shown that those who are initially more active, people who make the more edits early on, are more likely to stick around for much longer. Those who make fewer edits early on are less likely. So we would expect that for those who are only kind of middling active, that we would see a pattern something like this, that they would be retained longer than those who didn't receive a tea house invitation, but that the strength of that effect would diminish over time. Encouragingly, we also found that for the editors who were more active in general, those who received a tea house invitation were more likely than chance to have made 5 or more edits 2 to 6 months after the invitation than those who did not. So this shows us potentially that for highly motivated editors, those who are generally going to make more edits, we're getting more of those people retained when we invite them to the tea house than if we don't invite them at all. And this translates into a non-trivial increase in new editor survival. So in the short term, for editors who are invited to the tea house are 13% more likely to have made 1 or more edits 3 to 4 weeks after the invite. And perhaps even more excitingly, editors who are invited to the tea house are 16% more likely to have made 5 or more edits 2 to 6 months down the line. So this translates into for our particular sample of 14,000 editors. I actually don't remember the exact number that we came up with, but something like 1 to 200 more editors retained within that sample than if we had not invited any of them to the tea house. So now it's time to click on Aaron.
Aaron, you're live.
All right, great. Thank you. So on to the discussion. So I want to take you back to this funnel graph because I think it's a good way to think about what it is that we're doing here and what this sort of strategy means for the Wikimedia Foundation, for our ongoing initiatives around newcomer recruitment. So, you know, when we look at this funnel and we look at the hypothesized effect of an initiative like Visual Editor and an initiative like the Teahouse, I think that it's telling, and it's important to think of it this way, that they affect different types of barriers. So in the case of Visual Editor, it was only doing a technical literacy side of a barrier, showing you how to edit so that you didn't have to learn markup and learn other people's markup. Whereas the Teahouse is doing different types of literacy and reaching out into the social motivational barriers of Wikipedia. So if we can tear down these two major barriers, then we can actually see an effect of long-term newcomer retention. But it's important to note too that you know, if we tried to tackle just literacy or even just tried to tackle social motivational, that wouldn't be enough. The thing about barriers is that they all have to be down in order to make it through, and these barriers are independent problems for newcomers coming to the system. The cool thing that I think that this study suggests is that not only can we tear down technical literacy barriers like we've learned with Visual Editor, but we actually can have an effect with initiatives like this on the social motivational barriers and the harder literacy barriers in Wikipedia. And so we should probably be pursuing these multi-pronged strategies as part of our greater strategy, so that maybe someday we can actually tear down these entire barriers together. So there's some next steps for this study that I think are kind of important. Regretfully, and I really wish that this was the case, running a study like this doesn't really tell you exactly what happened. We have hypotheses for why we saw the effect that we did, but we don't really know why we did see it. So a really critical question that we could ask next is, did this actually address one of the gaps that we see as important to address in Wikipedia? So for example, does the Teahouse help retain more female editors? We know that there are more female editors in the Teahouse retention, but we don't know if it's targeting those editors specifically. We can also ask if it helps editors who are working in particular content areas. Does it support editors with particular motivations? And does it support editors who face particular socio-technical challenges? And for example, I'd really like to look into the negative reactions that newcomers are receiving in Wikipedia and see if the Teahouse can help with those types of things. So we'd like to do some follow-up analyses. It seems very clear that despite the large size of the sample, we need a larger sample if we're going to deal with the different sizes of the experimental and control group. It limits our statistical power to have this smaller control group. And we need to understand these contextual factors that influence retention and mediate the effect of the Teahouse invitation. It would be important to know if we're helping people who really didn't have a chance to survive, or if we're helping people who already looked like they were going to survive before they joined the Teahouse. And like I was saying, we want to know these interaction effects. Does the Teahouse help people who receive talk page warnings and reverts these negative reactions from Wikipedia? And is the Teahouse as effective for people who edit through mobile as people who edit through desktop? All right. And with that, I will open the floor to question and answer.
Can I say, I want to jump in and say two things that I totally forgot to say in the presentation. One, when we were doing some kind of like sanity checking after we finished with this analysis, we actually found that over 50% of the people in this sample had been doing more than half of their edits on mobile. So this is a really big, first of all, that's a lot of mobile-first editors. Second of all, this is a big confound because the Teahouse is not designed to work on mobile. So we, inviting somebody to the Teahouse who's primarily using desktop is potentially going to be a lot more useful than inviting somebody to the Teahouse who is editing mostly on mobile and therefore doesn't have as easy access to the forum or the resources it provides. So that's one of these contextual factors that I think we really bears examining. The second thing I wanted to say is that 16% increase may not seem like all that much, but it bears saying that no other Wikimedia Foundation initiative geared at retaining new editors so far has shown any meaningful increase in new editors retained. So this is really exciting because this may be the first time we can actually we have strong evidence that we on the foundation side have started an initiative that is having a positive impact on one of the major problems that our movement is facing.
Cool. Thank you, Jonathan. Thanks, Aaron. So I have a question, a comment from IRC, and then if there are no other questions, we come to the room. From IRC, it's out of curiosity, there's a question, Aaron, for you. Has the rate of incoming new accounts that do not contribute, so basically they're zero edits, fluctuated much since the Firehose period?
That's a good question, and it's one that I can answer. So I'm pulling up a page on Meta that I'm going to post a link to in IRC with no explanation. Regretfully, this page gives me raw counts. So in order to compare the this proportion of new users who save and edit within 24 hours with the raw number of new users who save and edit within 24 hours with the raw number of newly registered users, I'd have to do a little bit of mental math. But you could actually sit down with these graphs and do that math kind of quickly. I don't want to quite do it on the fly here, but that's, I would go back to the data. For somebody who doesn't have the data handy, I would look at these graphs and you can answer the question quite quickly. My sense is that it is very likely diminishing. We get a lot of registrations off of the Facebook article, and I think that that is largely due to people being confused about where they are and feeling like they need to register their Facebook account on Wikipedia. The people who register via the Facebook article seemingly never edit Wikipedia. So I think that that probably didn't happen before the exponential growth of Wikipedia, but sure enough, we can do this analysis and answer the question and see something. So yeah, ping me about that later, Chris, if you want to take a look.
Cool, thank you. And there is a comment also from Chris that another interaction effect to consider is basically the effect of other help space usages, like for example the help desk or the Wikipedia adventure, and basically how that can interact with Teahouse.
So one thing that we struggle with in this type of experiment is that there's a lot of propensities around somebody's interest in engaging in something. So there have been a lot of studies that have tried to figure out whether the old mentoring programs in Wikipedia actually worked, and they ended up not being able to really make much progress because one of the best predictors that somebody's going to get really excited about Wikipedia is they apply for a mentoring program. And I think that people sort of know this going in. If they feel excited about Wikipedia, if they feel like they might like to do a bunch of work, then they go engage in these sort of spaces. The nice thing that we had in this experiment is that we could manipulate the invitation to participate in these spaces, and so we were essentially dealing with the propensity issue with our experimental design. I think it might be quite interesting to, say, for example, extend Hostbot so that it can send invitations to all sorts of spaces and find out whether we should invite people to both, say, for example, the reference desk and, the help desk, well, maybe the reference desk too, and Teahouse, just invite them to Teahouse or just invite them to the help desk. That's something that we could do with experimental conditions or really complex propensity models.
Yeah, And there are other kind of other ways in which this gets a little confounded, because there's the we can't control um, completely whether people are going to discover these different forms by other means. So, for instance, in this study, and just the way HostBot runs in general, it won't invite you to the Teahouse if you've got a message on your talk page that has a link to the Teahouse on it already. And we excluded people who in our control condition who got a message to go to the Teahouse, through some other mechanism as well. When it comes to the Wikipedia Adventure, there's actually a link to the Wikipedia Adventure at the top of the Teahouse Q&A forum. So there's kind of we are kind of in service of offering new editors the opportunities to learn in the way they prefer to learn. We're actually blurring those edges already. We could certainly remove that for experimental purposes if we wanted. Right now, HostBot, as we speak, is inviting people to both the Wikipedia Adventure and the Teahouse. And the way I have it set up is that a certain set of people get a Teahouse invite, and a certain set of people who meet slightly different criteria are getting a TWA invite based on some hypotheses around what level of engagement people might manifest that kind of shows what kind of support they need. But there's nothing preventing us from doing a true A/B test where we're comparing the effect of both of these against control. Nothing other than Jake's willingness to do so.
Well, what I was going to say is it conceivable that the success of the Teahouse is precisely because there's a link to the Wikipedia Adventure on the page?
I mean, I don't think we can discount that.
That was
I
my
really don't.
entirely disinterested question.
Yeah, no, I think that there's a strong argument to be made that everything that's good about the Teahouse is entirely due to the Wikipedia Adventure.
Well, and the underlying variable behind both of them?
Me.
Heather Walls.
Yep. Yeah, and also to Heather Wall's engaging and aesthetically pleasing designs.
Okay, any questions, other questions or comments from the room?
Given that this is the first and not just a trivial kind of success, but kind of a relatively huge success in terms of past efforts, once you've confirmed and double confirmed the analysis, what do you think is warranted in terms of scaling this?
Like,
Well,
for
that's a great
instance,
question.
it could be easily rebuilt to work and actually work on mobile as well.
Yep. Yeah. So easily rebuilt to work on mobile. There are already Teahouses on many other Wikipedias. I just found out there was one on Persian Wikipedia today. I was not aware of that. I'm not currently aware of any other Wikipedias that have implemented the kind of entire Teahouse model, from automated invites to gadgets that make it easy to ask a question, to host expectations around how you interact with newcomers, to allowing people to express themselves with editor profiles. But I think that it would be useful to, if possible, evaluate the successes of some of these other Teahouses, and probably I can't promise this, but one thing that I've always wanted, and that I think some of these results support, is better just integration of Teahouse-like functionality into the kind of the generic new editor experience. That could range from actually supporting full Teahouses with bot-delivered welcome messages on different wikis, or you could support this with various MediaWiki extensions as well. Obviously, this is going to be something that's going to be community-driven wherever it happens, and so any design work around building Teahouse-like features would have to be done in collaboration with the local communities that are going to be supporting the Teahouse. The Teahouse just doesn't work without dedicated hosts. That's kind of the magic bullet of it. You can't just make good software that's easy for newcomers to use or beautiful and engaging designs. So, but I think that this gives us some support for pushing for better Teahouse integration and more Teahouses. Would you have anything to say around that, Aaron?
Yeah, so there's 2 points that I think are important to make. One is one that I was trying to make right when we started with the discussion, that there are a lot of initiatives that have not shown a strong effect on long-term newcomer retention. And I think that the reason for that is essentially they're earlier in the funnel than social motivational things. And there's a lot of social motivational issues with being a new editor in Wikipedia. There's a lot of reasons to feel frustrated and not find the experience rewarding. If we could just break down all of those barriers right now, then I think that we would see Visual Editor have a really substantial impact. And so with what I'm about to say, I want to couch this with that. There's probably a big reason that we didn't see impacts is because of this sort of multi-barrier situation. However, there's been lots and lots of initiatives aimed at trying to boost newcomer retention in Wikipedia, and they focused on technical problems. This idea that if we just made the software better or more up to date or more engaging, we would get more new people seems to at least not be immediately right, if not ultimately right at all. That our software and technological problems, I think, are very much secondary to the social problems that we have in Wikipedia, and that I would like that these results inspire people to consider the social space of Wikipedia as one of the key areas where we can actually push the needle, the bottom line, on new editor retention. And if we do focus on that first, then I think that we're likely to see the gains from improving the technology later. But like I was saying, I think that's the highest barrier that we have right now. So that's the low-hanging fruit, if you will.
Yeah, related to that. So the Teahouse is designed to remove certain social and motivational barriers, and it kind of casts a fairly wide net because getting questions answered and having positive interactions with people is something that's fairly generally applicable. But we don't know. There are a lot of other potential social and motivational barriers that the Teahouse does not explicitly address, and we are likely losing some subset of people because we aren't addressing those barriers. So one example might be the motivational barrier of finding articles that are relevant to your interests, where you can make, even as a newcomer, a clear contribution. So shout out to the work on article recommendation and link recommendation that's going on within research and data right now. Another somewhat related social barrier may be finding people on Wiki who share your interests, who you can work with. And who can become your collaborators, right? So not just finding stuff to work on, but finding sub-communities and getting involved in sub-communities of editors who you can collaborate with, share war stories with, learn from, in the context of doing the productive work. So this, even within the social and motivational barrier space, the Teahouse is only addressing particular ones. And though it does focus on addressing, it does focus on supporting particular sub-communities, particularly women in this case. There are other underrepresented and underserved sub-communities who, for instance, people who have whose grasp of English is not advanced, for one example, or people with different cultural norms around how they ask for support or how they interact with others, who the Teahouse may not be supporting.
Great. So in the meantime, I collected some more questions. So Jonathan, this next one is for you, and it's about your last remark, which I'm not sure if I remember fully, but I think it's related to the fact that you said that Wikimedia, maybe this is one of the first attempts from the Wikimedia Foundation that has resulted in this scale positive impact on retention. You said something along this line. I don't remember exactly your phrase. I think the question refers to that, and we're asking, agree that 16% is an awesome result, but didn't some of the experiments by the E3 growth team also show significant, if perhaps smaller, increases, at least in short-term retention? So
I think Aaron should answer this because he was actually doing the analysis work for the growth team.
So there were a few different strategies that we employed on the growth team to try and increase new editor engagement. They were almost all focused at the first few edits that an editor would make, with the hypothesis that we can get more people to actually make that first edit, and if we can direct them to the right places to make that edit, then they'll be more likely to have a positive experience. Regretfully, the only significant results that we were able to show for any of the experiments was either something negative, which was usually when we made a mistake in the interface and it made it hard to do something that people generally do, or a very small positive and significant increase in the proportion of editors who make their first edit. And so this was usually on the scale of 1 or 2% increases. And they were with the experiments around getting started, which would suggest places for newcomers to make edits. We saw nothing for any of the metrics that I would refer to as retention. So short-term engagement, but not even what I would refer to as short-term retention.
Got it. Thank you. There's another question from Jeff Powell asking, are the data sets publicly available or the Teahouse invites tagged?
So the Teahouse invites, all Teahouse invites are on or in a public database on Labs in the hostbot database. Yeah, and you can just look for the string Teahouse in the edit comment of any hostbot contributions, and you can find all the Teahouse invites. This particular database, we did some grooming and some post-processing. Currently, it's on an internal server, but absolutely, there's nothing on this, nothing in this database, no confidential information, so nothing that can't be made public, and we do intend to release this particular data set publicly, yeah.
Thank you. I have one question for you. So the two groups that you're testing on, the control and the other group, one of them gets basically 20% of the data, so the size of the two groups are not the same. What is the reason for that?
Yeah, so this is, so the reason for that is that I have long been convinced that the Teahouse works, and felt conflicted about depriving new editors, too many new editors of the opportunity to visit the Teahouse. So I tried to use the minimum viable control group to invite as many people as possible while still retaining a control sample that was sufficient for analysis. So basically, I just pulled a random subset of 50 out of every every set of invites and retained that as the control group.
Got it. I'm curious to see if the results change if you do otherwise, but I understand the fact that you don't want to risk it. So
yeah.
That's your
I'll also say that just that this data was actually collected for kind of in my spare time. Kind of like, oh, maybe I'll use this for something, and it wasn't until recently that we got actually a request to learn if the Teahouse worked, and so I had this data already.
Cool. Let me see. Question for either Aaron or Jonathan. The Teahouse and other help spaces have been known to attract sock puppet accounts from time to time, but I'm unclear on how frequent this happens exactly. Any idea on how big of a problem this is, or if it's not really a big problem?
We could quantify it. We could just look at of all the people who visited the tea house, how many were subsequently blocked for sock puppeting. Should just be a query against the log table. I check in on the tea house regularly, and I hear people talking about occasional disruptive sock editors. In general, I don't think that it's been enough of a problem to phase the hosts, and it's certainly not a large proportion of the visitors. So.
Okay. I don't have any other questions. Do you guys have any questions? Okay, no. Okay, then thank you very much for presenting. Thanks everyone for watching, offline or online. See you next month.
Thank you all.
See ya.
See you.
Bye.